Hello there, welcome to the Condor Virtual Airlines A321 training. During this training, we will talk about a few key facts and give out some helpful tips and tricks for the A321. Let's take a moment to talk about its measurements. The A321 has an overall length of 44 meters, a wingspan of 36 meters, and a height of almost 12 meters. The A321 is flying at a speed of Mach 0.79 and can climb up to 41,000 feet. Its typical range is 3,200 nautical miles. Now it is time to talk about flying the A321. Every flight begins at a gate or apron position. That's where we want to begin as well. After receiving your pushback clearance, you will switch on your beacon light and begin your pushback. Once the tail section of the aircraft reaches the taxi line, you will begin your turn. This will ensure a perfect alignment. While your aircraft is pushed back, you can start your engines one at a time. Once all of your engines are running, you will ask for a taxi clearance or announce your taxi. After receiving it, you can taxi to your assigned runway with a maximum of 25 knots. Please do not take any turns faster than 12 knots. While you are on your way to the runway, we recommend setting your flaps to the takeoff position. If you are light, flaps 1 should be enough. For takeoffs on short runways or with a heavy aircraft, you should select flaps 2. At this time, you may also set your takeoff trim, which should be between 10 and 25 degrees. The bold line we've just crossed is the low visibility hold short line. You must stop your aircraft in front of that line if the visibility at the airport is very poor. As we have a great visibility today, we proceed to the hold short line and stop in front of it. You may ask for a departure clearance shortly before you arrive at the hold short line or directly at it. Once you have received your takeoff clearance, you will align onto the runway and set takeoff thrust of 85 to 95%. In some cases, you will receive a line up and wait. You may taxi onto the runway, but do not take off until you get a takeoff clearance. Whenever you are entering an active runway, you have to switch on your strobes and landing lights. As our aircraft is hitting the 145 knots, we will begin to slowly pull up to take off. We keep gently pulling until we get an angle of attack of about 15 degrees. Once we have established a positive climb, we will retract the landing gear. Depending on the weight of the aircraft, we recommend a climb rate of 2,500 to 3,000 feet per minute. Once you have reached a speed of 200 knots, you can retract the flaps. After reaching 10,000 feet, you may reduce the climb to 2,000 feet per minute to speed up. You may now switch off the seatbelt sign and your landing lights. Approximately 20 minutes prior to your estimated arrival time, you will begin your descent. It is recommended to reduce your speed to 280 knots once you are below 27,000 feet. To avoid a violation, you must reduce your speed to 240 knots below 10,000 feet. Below 10,000 feet, you will switch on your seatbelt sign and landing lights again. Once you are on base for the runway, we recommend slowing down to 200 knots and setting your flaps to 1. During your final approach, you will slow down to 180 knots and flaps 2. Depending on the runway, traffic and ATC instructions, you may land your aircraft with flaps 3 and 150 knots or flaps 4 at about 135 knots. At least 2,000 feet above the runway, you should extend your landing gear. Your aircraft should land within the landing zone. If you are not able to touch down within this zone, you must go around. About 10 to 20 feet above the runway, you gently pull back to flare and butter the landing. Once you main and front landing gear touch down, you will activate the thrust reverser at about 60 to 80% depending on the runway length. After exiting the runway, you switch off the strobes and landing lights. If ATC is present, you must ask for a taxi clearance. You will switch off your engines once you have reached your final parking position. After that, you will switch off the beacon light and seatbelt sign. Please note that the navigation lights are never to be switched off and should be activated immediately after spawning. You are now familiarized with our A321-200. Please check out our other trainings at training.condor-virtual.com. Now sit back, relax and enjoy your flights with Condor Virtual Airlines.